Hey guys, welcome to the show. We are here joined today by my friend Jonathan Marks. Jonathan works in Marin County in San Francisco. I have had the pleasure of knowing Jonathan before this for a few years now. So I am really looking forward to this interview because I have some personal questions that I'd like to ask. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. Appreciate it.
You've been in this industry a long time. You've likely seen some crazy things. Are there any crazy stories that come to mind from your career?
In the midst of you asking that question, I was reminded of probably the worst thing you could hope to find as a rookie agent. And I was holding a listing open. It wasn't even my listing. I was holding the listing open for another agent in my office at the time. So I've been in the business for 20 years. So this is probably 19 and a half years ago. It was a three-story house, and I'm at the top. It's this gorgeous house with great views. And I can't you come in on the ground floor, and I was at the top, which is where the living and kitchen and all of that is. Lo and behold, I go down after everybody's gone through this open house for the last 3 hours on a Sunday, and I'm turning off all the lights, and I go into the bathroom, and not only had somebody used it, but they had clogged it, and so 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 here I am selling this $2 million house, and the toilet is not only clogged, it's stinky, it's just rancid, and no one ever came up to tell me. I don't know if that happened in the first 20 minutes or 10 minutes before I left, but it really wasn't a pleasant experience, but it did teach me a lot for sure.
No doubt. Well, and then then the question becomes, at least where my head goes, I'm like, well, how do I deal with this problem now? My
Right.
clients are coming home. Yeah,
Right. Right. Do I let him know that this just happened? Do I take the blame for it? Yeah, it was one of
yeah.
those tricky situations.
These are the
Navigating that
things that
conversation.
yeah, these are the things that people don't realize that happen in our career. The decisions we have to make. That's awesome. That's a good one.
It's very
That's a
true.
really
And
good
I
one.
actually want to share one other story with you that this was
Please.
my
Come on.
mentor at the time. She was out with some other agents and they're blabbing as they're getting out of their car. They walk into this house. There's all these people there. They're milling about and they look around and everybody's in black. And they had gone to the house, the wrong house next door where they were having a wake for somebody's passing instead of the broker tour. So I've been extremely conscious about making sure that the house I go into is the right
Oh
house to go
no.
into. Yeah, I think everybody's had those kinds of crazy.
As somebody who has been guilty of walking into the wrong house once or twice, that is a terrifying feeling. Oh, but
Yeah,
awake, that's terrible. Oh,
right.
great stories.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you. Of
you.
course.
Okay, now that we've kicked that off and gotten it out of the way, I what I happen to know about you is that this is not your first career, and so I would love to kind of rewind the clock, go back in time, and kind of talk about life pre-real estate. Anything that you think would be pertinent for us to know about your life uh, heading into becoming a licensed real estate agent, wherever you feel like would be important to start would be great. But I would love to hear about life before real estate for Jonathan Marks.
Yeah, life before real estate was a whole fascinating other chapter, and it almost seems like a different book as opposed to a chapter in the same book. I was living on the East Coast in Delaware where I went to school. I was studying essentially pre-law. I thought I'd go to law school. But at that point, I had already discovered the Grateful Dead. And the Grateful Dead was not just a passing phase or an interest, it was a passion. And having gone to many a shows at that point, this was in the mid 80s, I decided I wanted to make a t shirt and use the icon that's the dancing bears of the Grateful Dead. I was the first one to ever merchandise the dancing bears. I started selling them at shows in 1985 in Hampton, Virginia. And I was just holding t-shirts up in the parking lot selling them for $10. And I never missed a note of the show. I was always there for the music, but I would go outside after the show, run to my car, grab my shirts, come back and sell t-shirts. And I hit on something big. About 2 years later, actually the next year, that year, I moved out to California, threw everything in my car except my dog, said goodbye to my girlfriend, unfortunately, and took my butt out to San Francisco, where I continued to make t-shirts. I just knew I wanted to live in San Francisco, and the Grateful Dead were based here. So I moved to the Haight and was doing random graphic design jobs, which was my thing because I decided it wasn't going to apply to law school. I didn't know if I had the wherewithal to do that. And when I got to the city, I was freelancing as a graphic artist, selling t-shirts. The t-shirt thing got bigger and bigger, and within 3 years, I became a licensee of the Grateful Dead. My company, Grateful Graphics, was one of three main licensees for the Grateful Dead. And if ever there was the do what you love and you'll that will be your career that you will get the most out of. Here I was, all of a sudden, I'm making t-shirts, and once I became licensed, I wasn't selling them at shows anymore. I was just wholesaling them all around the country, internationally, I should say. I ended up going to Japan 13 times over 6 years to sell t-shirts there and other goods that I had. I traveled the world, and Grateful Dead shows became a business write-off because I wasn't selling at shows anymore. So here I'm
That's
going
incredible.
everywhere I went to see the Dead. I'm writing off all my expenses because it's business. And I built a
Which it was.
very, which it was, and I built a very substantial wholesale business that branched off from the Grateful Dead. And I started doing work for the Elvis Presley estate, Gibson Guitar, a number of other bands. And then I started a junior girls clothing line. Anyway, I loved it. I had that business for 18 years. But after Jerry Garcia died and things started to change in the landscape of retail, especially around small independent record stores and head shops, and I had 3 kids at the time, and I was just traveling too much, and I had lost my mojo for that because I wasn't going to see Dead shows anymore. It just became a business. A great business, pardon me, a fun one, but it was more of just a business. And at that point, I decided it was time to make a change. And fortunately, Grateful Graphics provided well enough that I started to buy property. So I bought my first house in San Francisco in 1989. Fun fact, I was supposed to close escrow on the day of the 1989 earthquake in San
I
Francisco.
was just about to ask about that because I was like, 89 in San Francisco. There's something that
Bingo.
happened that year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was supposed to close that day, October 17th, and they ended up putting a moratorium on closings for 30 days while they re-inspected all the houses to make sure they were okay. Because a lot of them have old brick foundations in San Francisco. And I bought that house. I bought a rental property, and I was buying and selling some other properties in Sonoma County, ultimately in Marin, but not as a realtor. I was using realtors. And this brings me to my career because in the time that I was buying and selling houses, I used a variety of realtors all around, and I never felt like I really mattered to them beyond the transaction. I remembered thinking that I'm just another deal. And I would get that warm and fuzzy. It's great. Well, we're so happy. We'll see you for dinner. We'll take you out. We'll get the kids together. And nothing ever happened. I didn't hear from any of those realtors. And at the time, I thought, oh, if I ever got into real estate, I would do it with heart and soul. And when I decided to move out of Grateful Graphics and get into something else, real estate was a natural progression because I had a very strong interest in architecture anyway. And that was 20 years ago this past August.
So before we move into your real estate career, I'm curious now when you were buying up property, what was your kind of end goal there? Were you just buying rental investment property, just buying and holding? Were you flipping homes? What were you doing at the
No,
time?
I wasn't smart enough or savvy enough to flip. I didn't really have the wherewithal at that point. I was still in the world of apparel, which was all consuming, doing design and production and managing a very large warehouse. I bought a primary residence first for myself in San Francisco. Then I bought a rental building in San Francisco, a 3-unit building in an area that was on the fringe of being a desirable area. It has since become one of the most desirable areas. So fortunately a cash cow. And in fact, one of
And
my daughters,
you still own it.
I still own it. One of my daughters is living in it. Yeah, there's
Oh,
3
that's
units
neat.
there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I bought a little vacation cottage up in Sonoma County, ended up selling that to get a bigger house up there. There was a lot of movement. Ultimately, I ended up with a primary residence in Marin and my rental building. And that's
Got it.
where I kind of stopped doing all this buying and selling. And more of it was trading up, as you can imagine, as opposed to I didn't buy and hold other than the rental building.
Sure. Okay, so talking about your apparel business, because I mean, most people don't start a business in their life. You've started at least 2, even though they're different industries. It takes, like, a level of, courage to start a business. We'll just say courage. You moved from the East Coast to San Francisco, packed up your whole life, kinda said, "I'm doing this." And obviously, you're at a different stage in life. You didn't have kids yet and all of that, but I'm curious, what lessons did you learn the first go around that helped you when you were propelling into your second career in real estate?
The answer that you would expect to get is, "Oh, I have a exhaustive knowledge of business planning and pulling systems in place," and I didn't know squat. I threw everything in my
Love it.
car to drive out to California. I knew one person, and my father had said, "Here's somebody, when you get out there, you could call them," and I called them when I got here, and the guy said, "Well, my wife is sick, so you can't stay here," and I'm thinking, "Well, I just drove across the country. I have no idea what I'm gonna do." I figured it out. I have someone who became my dear friend or almost a second mom to me, who I ended up befriending, and we spent a lot of time with her and her kids. But what it taught me was that whatever I needed to do, I could get done and I could do myself. And I believed in, and I still believe in, and maybe this is this higher power that I abide by, that I just follow my intuition. And while it's led me astray at times, as it invariably will, I also look at those moments as maybe they didn't really lead me astray. Maybe they led me down the path I needed to go down to learn the right path to go down. And so building Grateful Graphics and having probably 6 employees at one point, and dealing with everything from their drama to having to fire my best salesperson because of a concern of a sexual issue he had. And there was just a lot of big moments that I had to adult to and become part of. And as a result, it gave me a lot of faith in my decision making. And when I did Grateful Graphics, I never aspired ever to have a large multi-million dollar wholesale business that would take me to Japan. I was selling t-shirts in the parking lot, and I grew incrementally. And from that, the lesson that I could say is a good takeaway for me is I realized that I have the ability to grow something when I put my mind to it. I have to believe in it, but if I believe in it, I know that I could grow it through the seeking of information from people who know more than me, whether it's through books, whether it's through just asking questions, whether it's going to seminars that I think, why am I here? And then at the end, I realize there's one nugget that I got out of it that's going to help propel whatever I was dealing with at the time, whether it was growing my business or my photography interest or sport. So I would say that it's more of just a belief in myself and a tenaciousness that I know I strive for success. And also I have to credit my father and his father, my grandfather, who are my dad's still alive, my grandfather is not. And my dad is a huge proponent of sales, loves it, loves to talk about it, has really instilled that in me, which has in turn just bled into everything that I do.
He
People love
he
to say
gave
I'm
you
a natural.
courage.
He gave me courage, and he gave me the inner strength to believe in what you're doing and get it done. And as he likes to say, there is no plan B. That's his famous quote that I still hear him saying when I would question something. He says, "There is no plan B. You go and you just stay on your path and you make it work." And he's been right.
That's incredible. I have another question that popped up as I was hearing you talk about employing, I had 6 employees and you're running a company with logistics. I think a lot of agents like me, um, don't think about being an employer or a manager as an agent. But now teams has become a really important thing. And there are people who are successful agents who want to grow, they want to scale, they build a team, and they have no experience being an employer or managing people. You have a team now and you had a business before where you employed people. I'm curious if there's any little nuggets of wisdom that maybe you gleaned from all this time employing people to or managing people. Not to say maybe you were the best at it, but you certainly have more experience than the average agent who's maybe thinking about growing a team or is listening to this and is struggling with leading a team. I'm just curious if anything comes to mind from what you've learned, as an
Ryan,
employer of people.
that's a great question, and I've I have the most apropos answer for that,
That's
and
okay.
that is, do as I say, but don't do as I do. And by that by that, I mean, when I had Grateful Graphics, my girlfriend at the time, Susie, her mom, she once just we were sitting there talking, having a glass of wine, and she said, "Your problem is you just want your employees to be your friends. Your employees are your employees, they're not your friend." Okay, Natalie, you're right, right? That's it. I'm gonna and that's just not the case. And I can tell you with my team now, I have 3 agents under me. I have a director of operations. I've had 3 other director of ops over the years, and I would say all of them are, there's my family, and then there's them. They're not in a separate category, and that's what I say. My advice is your team members or your junior agents or those with whom you're working, they're your work friends, they're your collaborators, they're your employee or your, for me, they're independent contractors, except my director of operations. But at the same time, I would give a lung. If one of them needed a transplant, they would get it from me. And so I know that there's an issue often with people allowing those with whom they work to get too close. I've also found it more endearing, and it builds a level of trust that, to me, I would rather sacrifice allowing somebody in too close than having this distance, and that's worked well for me.
That's a great answer. I actually find that to be a great answer and honest, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Um, Shifting gears. So we've talked about pre-real estate career. What was kind of the moment, the turning point when you said, "Okay, I know you mentioned you had 3 kids, so you're at a different stage of life, you're traveling a lot." Was there, like, a singular moment that you remember that you were like, "Okay, it's time to be done to wrap this up?" And did you go immediately into real estate, or was it, we wrapped up things with Grateful Graphics, we've set that aside, and then you took some time in between? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, that was a harder time. Grateful Graphics had been extremely successful and then started to wane considerably because of not only were we years after Jerry Garcia died and the dead stopped playing, but also a lot of the independent record shops, head shops, and small boutiques were closing up, or the malls were moving in, the strip malls rather were moving in, and everything became more homogenous. And so as these stores were fading and business was flailing, it was providing barely enough after being extremely generous to me for many, many, many years. At that point, I knew I needed to make a transition. And so while I was winding down Grateful Graphics, which I ended up selling what was left of it at the end, which wasn't much, but it was something to give me a little bit of a start, I was starting to do real estate. And my wife at the time, Paula, and my kids, everybody was very tolerant. My kids were young. They were very young when I really got into real estate. They were 2, 4, and 6. So they didn't have much of a notion of what was going on, so to speak. By the same token, we just lived a little slimmer. And then it didn't take me long until I caught the real estate bug and really boomed in it. And the beauty of it is in my area, even back then, you didn't have to do a vast number of deals to make enough to survive. Our price point is rather high by most comparisons, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it turned out that way. The other important thing to keep in mind is I didn't know that real estate was going to be my forever thing. I just thought it was going to be my next thing. And that's where I count my lucky stars that I got into something that not only do I love, but after, and you know this, after doing it long enough, it's referral business coming in. It takes very little effort. The price point keeps going up. Why not do it forever?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What, for those who maybe aren't super familiar, and also 20 years ago is a very different, what is average price point in Marin County now? What was it like back then?
I don't remember what it was then. I imagine it was still probably 700,000 20 years ago or something. Because right now it's
Which
one.
probably was like blowing back then, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that's probably a good average if I had to think about it. Right now, it's probably 1.6, 1.7. So
And how big might a 1617 house be? As somebody as 2 guys sitting in North Texas, we right?
you're right. That is a starter home maybe in some of the southern Marin towns.
Got it.
It's
It's painful.
you're not getting a pool and land and a vast amount of space around your house for that price anywhere. Yeah.
That's awesome. So as somebody starting out in real estate, you caught the bug. Where did you pick up? Were you on your own? Did you find a mentor? Because you're shifting gears entirely. You know a decent amount about even sales at this point. You've done some selling, but I mean, you don't know much about real estate other than the properties you bought. Where do you start?
You'll appreciate this, Ryan. Talk about being a tenacious fool. There were a number of major brokerages in Marin County where I was living. The one that I wanted to work with, Pacific Union, was the only one that did not have photos on business cards. And I thought, I want to work for them because it's classier than having your photo on a card, at least in our area. Plain cream card with green writing. So I went and talked to the manager, who I heard was the best in the county. And he said, well, I don't hire new agents. I said, well, okay, but this is where I want to work. Well, I don't hire new agents. Well, this is where I want to work. He said, well, go talk to this person at this brokerage and this person at this brokerage and this other brokerage. I'm sure they'll hire you. So I went and talked to them, and all of them said, sure, yeah, we'd love to have you. As soon as you get your license, or maybe I had my license, let us know. We'll be more than happy to bring you on. Welcome to our team. I went back to Steve and he said so. And I said, yeah, they all said they'd hire me, but I don't want to work for them. So he said, well, I don't hire new agents. And then I said, well, this is where I want to be. And he said, well, then look, I'm not going to do it, but go talk to Carrie Pace. She teaches this class, this 1 week class. So I went and did the class, and I came back to him, and same old story, right? And he said, I'm not going to hire you. And I said, but Steve, this is where I want to work. And he finally stopped himself and he said, if you're going to be this determined to sell yourself, you're going to be a good salesperson. I will bring you on, but you have to have a mentor here. Here's your two you can choose from. All right, I'll take that one over there, Carol. And I was off and running.
That is a great
Yeah, I was so determined. That was where I wanted to be. And as it turned out, it was a great move because that manager really was between him and his co-manager, Steve and Craig, they made me what I am. They were instrumental in helping me understand the business, as was my mentor, Carol. She was and still is a friend, but she was at the time. She's retired now. Phenomenal. As a mentor, as an agent, it's just all I could have ever asked for.
That's so good. You
Yeah.
mentioned early on, heart and soul was missing from previous agents you worked with. So you're starting out your business. How do you begin to infuse those aspects into your business?
I'm glad that you asked that, Colin, because my logo at the time was real estate with heart. And then I had a trifold brochure, and I did everything on a shoestring budget, but it looked really good because I had a good design sense, I think. And it was real estate. I think it was real estate with heart and soul, or it was something. I just went for it. And to your point earlier, Ryan, about building business, when I first started, I didn't just think I'm going to be Jonathan Marks, the realtor. In my mind, I thought, well, if I could do this myself, I could also do it bigger with other people. So instead of buying jonathanmarks.com, which is actually owned by some bald Swedish guy, so I couldn't get it, I ended up buying adhomeinmarin.com, at home in San Francisco.com, at home in Sonoma.com, at home in Berkeley.com. I bought all these surrounding URLs thinking,
So smart.
so this is
So
this is
smart.
my this is my thinking. I know I'm going to get into selling houses, and then I'm going to sit in the ivory tower smoking a big cigar, saying, "Hey, you over there, go sell more houses." And like, what am I thinking? I'm buying this whole thing. Meanwhile, I haven't done a deal. So
I love it.
it turned out to be really fun because I ended up having at home in San Francisco, at home in Marin, and at home in Sonoma, three different websites, even though it was just me selling on all three. It's a fun way to get started. But again, to your point about building a business, I knew that there was more to be had. Though it took me 15 years before I finally decided maybe the team is the way to go.
So you were a solo agent for the first 15 years.
I was. And then I had one of these pivotal moments, probably 6 years ago, where I was living in Marin, which is where I've been my whole career for real estate, also working in San Francisco. And I had someone in the city who decided they weren't going to work with me because they, quote, felt like I didn't have enough time for them. And that was one of those just truly heartbreaking, but so powerful wake up calls for me that I realized I don't ever want anybody to think that I don't have time for them, because if I'm telling them that I'm building this business on heart and soul and I'm really present for them and they don't feel that, then I'm not doing something right. And it was at that point that I thought either I give up the San Francisco business or I figure out how to do this in a way that incorporates another agent and ultimately three now, in an effort to have everyone feel like what I wanted everyone to feel, which is that they're my only client.
Do you, um, as somebody who really cares about client experience, and I know that about you because I've known you for a while now, uh, how do you think about this hyper technology driven, um, Instagram focused culture that we're in right now? And how do you balance, okay, I want to take advantage of technology, but I also want to make sure that I am like investing in this relationship. How do you deal with the tension there? Because I do think some people have sold out so much to technology that they've lost the touch. And then some people are so hell bent on keeping high touch that they've been like lost the technology. How have you embraced that? Because clearly you're in on tech because you had a URL that probably cost you 9 cents 20 years ago that would cost you like you couldn't buy now.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a very poignant question that I can answer in such a way that speaks to my goal in my personal and professional life is balance, and they're not always going to be even. Balance is not always even, but there's different times when there's going to be more weighted toward one or the other. I am pretty firm with my clients in telling them that we are highly technical. Compass has great programs that make it easy. We can communicate through the app. We can have your collection. We're going to work collaboratively. I make it clear I don't expect people, let me back off. I don't want people to expect me to do everything for them. I want this to be a collaborative effort instead of me having to see all the properties for them, etc. On the flip side, and the balance of that is that every time when we meet new clients, afterwards, we send them out a gift package that has travel coffee mugs and coffee and a handwritten card. During the process, we have these really nice cards that I put together. They're one-sided, they're a really nice finish, and the other side is where we write the message. And we have a card that says, "Let's do this," when we get into escrow, we send a handwritten card to our clients and to the agent. We send a handwritten card to them that says almost there when they've removed their contingencies. We continually send handwritten cards to clients, as well as something else that we do, which I'm really proud of, is that every time we do a transaction, we not only acknowledge the client, we acknowledge the agent, and then we make it a point to go to Google if they have a review, and we will review the other agent.
So good.
And the goal being that and I like to tell my agents this, that if you think about our business, the other agents are really our sales reps, right? If each of these 1,300 agents in Marin, let's just call it let's call it 10%, 130 of them had one client who was in the price range of the house you're trying to sell. For you to find 130 people is really hard. But for you to find these agents already who are in our roster and let them farm it out. So our relationship effort really goes as much into the other agents as it does our clients. And we're very high touch in that way too. We don't send out, yes, we post on social media. Yes, we have beautiful flyers and all of that, and our marketing efforts are very digital, as are the searches. But at the same time, we spend a lot of time infusing our relationships with the personal touch.
I want to play off that a little bit. So I'm big on high touch as well. I love that. Learning a lot from you even now. But as you bring on a team, so you move from being a solo agent to bringing on team members, kind of what aspects of the client relationship or transaction do you guys partner on, or do you hand off, just to give up some of your time and free you up to be more front and center?
I would love to say I'd pass off more than I do, but I love my business. Every year I think I'm going to give up more, and I pass on leads to my team for sure. Could I pass on more and have more time to mountain bike or go play pickleball or go to the gym? Yeah, but I still get enough time in my day to do that. And I really, especially lately, I was just talking to my financial advisor this morning and I said, I'm in this groove now where the it's matured so much that my agents are amazing. They're my best friends. They are everything I want them to be. I trust them. We collaborate. I have one-on-ones with every one of them every week. Then we have a team meeting every 2 weeks. So there's a lot of, plus I talk to them all the time via text or email or another call. But we have a one-on-one where we dial it in every week. And then bigger picture, the beauty of the way that we're structured is that we anybody can go away and everybody would be able to share in that person's work if necessary, or those clients. So while we operate independently, if you look at our reviews, what you'll find 9 out of 10 times are people comment on working with Gianna and everyone at Mark's Realty Group, or working with Jonathan on this transaction and his team. And I enjoy knowing that the team is acknowledged as much as the individual agent, because it really is our brand is we try to present it in a way that it is the power of many.
How do you instill a culture of that type of collaboration? And I mean this sincerely. I think a lot, me included, a lot of agents, we're so used to build when we build our business, it's like we're control freaks. We're gonna tackle it from A to Z. We wanna make sure everything is right. We're dotting I's and crossing T's. It's difficult to bring other people in because it's difficult to give up control. And however, I do think the sum can be better than the individual parts if you do it correctly. And it sounds like something that you're doing is allowing you to create this collaborative environment. And I'm just curious if there's anything that you found that's been helpful to get to that place. And I know it's probably a work in progress and you're very humble, but I really would love to hear what your thoughts would be on that.
It's a trust. I think more than anything, I trust them. And I also would be the first to acknowledge I've learned from everyone. And I've never held myself so high on the horse as I'm the end all be all. I'm always open to hearing their suggestions. I've learned a lot, especially in tech, from those that are younger. It's not like I'm not tech savvy, but I'm always learning something new and trying to implement it or talk about it. We're really collaborative in that way. And while ultimately the decisions are mine, I don't ever, rarely would I say, am I going to put the gavel down and say, it's this way or you're out. It's this is what I would prefer us to do. But if there's an issue with it, let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. The thing to keep in mind also, and this is important, at least in the way my organization is set up, is every sale that our team does goes under my MLS number.
Mhm.
That way
Okay.
it's all recorded as the Marks Realty Group. What that means is that everything related to that, to my MLS number, to my brand, is my responsibility. And I say that because there was an instance last year with one of my agents where, and I've told them, whatever you do, I will support you. You can make mistakes. I don't want you to, but we're all going to make mistakes, and I have, and whatever it takes, I'll help you. And there's one instance last year that it could have gotten ugly, to say the least. And I just threw money at it and made it go away. And everybody was happy in the end. But I thought that's the best thing I could do. I don't need the money as much as I need to know that my agents trust my word that I will support them through thick and thin. And they're not making silly mistakes. It's just, as you know, or at least in California, right? Most people don't use attorneys here. They're trusting us as their agents to help them understand and interpret and then sign on the dotted line these legally binding contracts. It's a very large responsibility that we can't take lightly. As a result, I've instilled that fear in them enough that they know if there's any question, come to me. And if I don't know, which I often won't, we'll talk to a manager or we'll talk to our legal team. But we leave very little to chance, and as a result, the collaboration between us, it's really supportive and very loving.
I, my father-in-law, he'll appreciate this shout out, but he is an trainer on the Speed of Trust, which is Stephen R. Covey book. And he talks about organizations and how important it is for people to be able to talk about when they have a problem or they need help. And I think that what you're saying, I'm hearing, I'm like, you've created a leadership environment where you're not creating fear around somebody raising their hand and going, I don't know the answer here. Because you're willing to say, I don't know the answer here, let's go find out. And to me, I think that's incredibly important. So I don't know if you would agree if that's what you're saying, but that's what I'm hearing.
I would, and I would take it one step further, and something that I've told my staff at Grateful Graphics, I tell my kids, I tell my agents, you can come to me with any problem, but come to me with solutions. They may not
That's really
work,
good.
but you come to me with thoughts on how best we can resolve this, and then we'll figure it out together.
That's really, really good.
We're talking a little bit about investments in your team. I mean, you've led teams, but I'm also just curious, where do you go for inspiration, whether education, coaching, networking, mentoring, things like that?
Mhm. I just read a lot, and these are not books, 'cause that is my resolution this year is to read a book. Ryan's constantly talking about books that he's read, and he's referring out, and I'm thinking, "Oh my god, I should read a book."
You know what I'll
I'm
do?
right. I'm with you. I'm with you.
I, yeah, I'll just annoy you guys until you read the books that I throw at you. You know what I'll do? I'll just start ripping pages out of the books and just sending them to you, so you just read a page at a time.
No, I actually am. My resolution, one of them is to read more because I do love reading and I don't want to read about real estate because I look at every Inman article that comes in. Compass sends out plenty of information. I read a lot about real estate, but I honestly, much to the surprise of many, I don't look at leadership books. I don't look at goal building and planning. I really don't. I've just done it by intuition. I feel very fortunate that it's led me as far as it has with very little trouble or few speed bumps along the way. But it's more organic. It's really about what I see happening, and I wish I could turn off my mind, which is something that's why I meditate every day, is because I do try to have 20 minutes of calm in my day where I'm not constantly thinking about something. But I'm such an observer of the world and paying attention to the details that often something I see in a wholly different discipline, there's something there that I want to, oh, I can incorporate that into my business. And so there's a lot of this overlap of my life and how it ends up building and affecting my work.
Uh, you are a photographer as well, I understand. Um, how obviously that aesthetic sense finds its way into your work. I want to have one particular call out of that because I'm selfishly interested in this. As somebody who also sends out a weekly email newsletter, you have a fantastic one, and and I don't know how much of that you do yourself anymore, but I love if you could speak about that and anything you've learned from doing that. How long have you walking in the into the weekend? Is that what it's called?
It is. And
Okay.
yeah, hey, is this on film?
Sorry.
Are we recording? Are we
Hey,
recording this? Because if it is,
this is about honesty. This is about honesty.
okay. Ironically, I get an email from my marketing company every Thursday. What do you think of tomorrow's email? It looks good. Send it out, or could you
That's fine.
capitalize the T there? And what really makes it such a funny response is if I did have to do that, I would not have an interest in photography because there's so much that goes into putting the right marketing piece together. And again, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier, which is trusting, right? So I'm not telling my marketing company what to do. I trust we've been working together long enough that they know my voice, so to speak. They know my vision. They know my aesthetic. They know the way I speak and present. If I can trust them to put together a piece that I'm really proud of every week, that even my father, most weeks I get an email back from him saying, I love your newsletter this week. Great work. Thanks, Dad. And I've just seen it an hour before he did. And that's okay because it
It
does,
is okay.
again, free me up to have more balance in the other parts of my life. I don't want to spend the time doing what I could pay other people to do as well, and in most cases, better.
And if it's something that you don't enjoy, because it seems to me like the theme of our conversation is what you've done over the years is really zeroed in on, hey, what parts of this job am I particularly excited about and enthusiastic about? And then I'm going to outsource the rest. So, what other things have you found to be the levers you can pull to outsource? And then what parts of the process do you particularly still get excited about?
I get excited about winning.
I love that. You have
I'm a
to
com-
where you live.
I'm a
Gosh,
I'm a competitive a-hole when it comes to games. My kids will tell you that, as will my girlfriend. I
would
really am.
never have guessed that. Would
I think
never
people
have
stop
guessed
playing.
that.
So that's another one of my resolutions to not be that person when I play games. But I just and I realized that earlier well, it's probably just a few months ago. I was involved in this heavy duty negotiation, and when I got it, it was one of those months because there was this brief spurts in my last few years where I thought I could retire or I could really slow down. And then this few months ago, this deal came and I got it. This multiple offer. My clients just think I'm right? The gift of the gods of real estate above. And I thought, it's not even the kudos I get from them, and it's not the check I get at the end of it. It's that competitive spirit. It's that I really enjoy putting together an offer that presents beautifully. I have a cover sheet that goes out with every offer that agents are just they admire so much because it encapsulates the whole offer. It's not in an email, it's not having to go through the contract. The way that I like to approach it is in such a way that when I feel like I've won, there's a high to that. There's an adrenaline rush that comes. I love that part. If I never had
It
to
is
do
a
another
great part.
it's a great
It's
part,
a great part.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a win for everybody. If your offer is accepted, you're of course you're happy. Your clients are thrilled. The sellers are obviously happy because they took your offer. Their agent is. It's a really that part to me is so deeply enjoyable. Again, the money aside, yes, it's a job. Our job pays very well. But beyond that, I love the thrill of just seeing my clients just elated that they got the house that they wanted, especially when there's multiple offers. On the flip side, if I never have to do another open house, bye bye, I'm good. I one of the best parts about having my agents, and I could share this because I'm sure it was the same way with you, or at least I would think so, is the way that I built my business was doing other agents' open houses every Sunday for probably 2 years, 3 years. I hated it. Putting the signs out on the rainy day while people are driving by, and I feel like, "Oh, man, I hate this." Or they're a sunny day, they're going to the beach, and I'm putting the signs out. "Oh, I hate this." Now, I have a lot of listings. I give them to my agents. All the leads are theirs to collect. They handle it all. I'll handle the occasional open house depending on the client, but my clients also know that I'm doing all this legwork to get their property ready for market, that by the time we're going on the market, my the bulk of what I've done for them is already done in the list prep, the staging.
At this stage in your career too, when people hire you, they realize all of your experience and strategic expertise. The value you add isn't that you're standing in their house greeting people. The value that you're adding predominantly is you know this area better than anybody else. Your marketing is spot on. You have the relationships to put their home in front of people in the best possible light. You're the lever you're pulling is your knowledge and experience that you're bringing to bear on every home.
Yes, Ryan, but for the fact that it also plays back to what we were talking about earlier, which is being so high touch. And there's a fine line between seeming like I'm above doing their open house.
100%.
For my clients, I would do anything for just about any of them. But for most of them, I also understand that the best use of my time is putting the effort in prior to and getting it ready for the market and letting my hungry agents who know the property and know everything about the seller's story and speak with the same level of knowledge, have them excitedly hold it open both weekend days instead of 2 hours on a Sunday that I would do. So they're really getting the best of the team, which is why I was saying that a lot of our reviews will talk about working with me and everyone at Marks Realty Group or Tobias and the team.
That's a great that nuance I think is important because you're right.
Hmm.
It is easy to go, you know what? I'm gonna outsource and because I am so experienced and now you've just completely separated yourself from not only the transaction, but from your client. So that's awesome. Um, I'm curious at at this stage in your life, if you were to cast a vision, this stage in your career, you know, you've been in this 20 years. For those who are listening to this that are maybe a couple of years in, it's been a challenging market in a lot of places. Not the easiest time to get into real estate, or to even be, let's say, less than 5 years in real estate. It's been a hard time for a lot of people. If you could cast a vision of what this career can be for those who need, sometimes they just need hope to go, okay, I'm aiming at something. You talked about balance. You know, we talked a lot of agents that still haven't quite found balance, but I know you well enough to know that you're doing a pretty good job of finding balance. Um, what vision would you cast for people of what this real estate career could be, to give them a little hope?
Here's a cold splash of water. Maybe agents don't want to hear. When I was building my team, and I was first looking at adding a team member and then a second, then a third, one thing that I realized is that just about anybody out there can be taught how to write an offer, how to review disclosures, how to look at inspections. What I was looking for was the connector, the person. And that is not easy to find. The rest of it can be taught. But as you know, Ryan, and we've been friends for a while now, and those in our networking group, it feels like everybody deeply cares about everybody else. And there's a level of care and an attention to the human spirit that if you have that and then go into real estate, you're bound to be a success. But if you just decide I'm going to be a realtor because it makes good money and you don't have that quality of being a people person, I feel like it's a larger uphill trek than others that go in with that personality trait already in place. And I would say to them, spend less time reading books on transactional processes and goal building and building your business, and spend more time on books that speak to the human spirit. David Brooks has great books on this. There's others that are out there that talk about communication. And I've seen it with the agents on my team. I've seen it with other agents out there who just wonder why they're not successful, and they just don't get that. And I can't speak to everybody's level of success and foreshadowing what they may or may not become. But if they don't feel like they're a connector, if they don't feel like they're a people person, it doesn't mean they're not going to be successful. It means I would devote the time and the energy to that side of their life more to the than to the business side. The business is going to come. If you're standing at an open house and you're a connector and people walk in, you're going to engage naturally in a conversation. If all you're concerned about is how do I get them to sign this document and I need a deal to happen, it's apparent to people, even if it's not to you.
That's such a good piece of advice. I had my first broker who was relatively young in the business himself, and I was, a baby at the time. We sat down for our first training and I, turned to him and I was like, "So how did you build your business?" And he turns to me and he's like, I don't know. I just take really good care of people. And at the time I was disappointed. I was like, "Come on, like give me some steps. Like I want the steps." And it's like the truth is I did the steps I could get anywhere. I really needed to go double down on the people. Double down on the people. That was probably the best advice I could have heard.
Yeah,
So I love that.
I would agree.
Well, we are slightly over time. I apologize, but I'm grateful that you gave us. You're generous with your time. I will wrap up with our final question, which is, you've had a 20 plus year career. You had almost a 20-year career in something before that. Little did you know when you transitioned from grateful graphics to this next thing that was real estate at the time that you would be doing it as long as you have. If you could get in a time machine and head back in time and talk to Jonathan Marks 20 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
Thought about this. I would spend all the time in my car learning languages.
That's so awesome. That's not
I,
even a
Yes.
business thing. I love it.
I thought about that because everything else just you're going to grow over time, right? Yeah, could I tell you to read more books or go to more seminars? I think that's all just canned responses. But this is a great opportunity for personal growth beyond real estate, right? And I remembered thinking, or just having this awakening one day that if I had spent all that time driving around when I didn't have clients in the car, learning a language, I'd be fluent in multiple languages by now, and I just have such a richer spirit in that way. But here I am. I speak English. That's it.
Spoken like somebody who craves balance in their life. I love that. You're like, my answer is nothing to do with real estate. I think that's so great.
No, but just to put a bow around all of this, I find this career to be so incredibly enjoyable and fulfilling. And we really are making a lot of, it sounds corny, but we're making a lot of people's dreams come true. The foundation that we're giving them physically and spiritually of their first house often is huge. Everybody remembers their first house, right? I grew up in Baltimore. I left there many decades ago, but I would take my kids back there. Last year we were there because my mother passed away, and I took them by the house where I grew up. And I moved away from there, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago. So for me, knowing that the impact that a house has on me and so many others, we still take my daughter by the house where she was born in our Mill Valley house. My son was born in our San Anselmo house. They're powerful milestones in our lives, and we get to be a part of it. And I will never take that for granted. I think it's a gift that we're in this business that happens to also be a very lucrative one. but it's it's really doing so much for so many in a way that I never thought I would be impacted by it until I got into it, and I realized just how important the idea of home is for people and how instrumental a role we play in that.
Well said and spoken, like somebody who wanted to put heart and soul back into real estate. So
You got it, brother.
really appreciate it. I want to encourage anybody who's listening to this. If you have a client who's moving to Marin County or San Francisco, and you resonate with Jonathan, which I don't know how you don't resonate with Jonathan, but if you don't resonate with Jonathan, if you do resonate with Jonathan, hey, send your client his way. Could not be in better hands. Um, Jonathan, we really appreciate you being on with us.
And the pleasure is mine. Thank you for thinking of including me in this. I wish you guys great success. And Ryan and Colin, I hope we get to meet in person before long.
Absolutely, truly an honor. Hey, where can people find you online?
Marks, Marks, realtygroup.com. Same on Instagram. Anywhere you can, you'll find us.
Let's go. We love it. Thank you.
Right on.
Thanks,
All
Jonathan.
right. Thanks, you guys.
Hey, y'all, Ryan and Colin here. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you have gotten any value from the show, and if you resonate with our thoughts on how we serve clients, and happen to have a client moving to the Dallas Fort Worth area, we would love to serve them. Our promise to you is that we will take exceptional care of every single person that you send our way, that we will collaborate with you every step of the process to make sure that it is a seamless experience for everybody involved. And we're going to offer you a generous referral fee as a thank you for trusting us with that relationship. Now, you can connect with us through our social channels, or you can go to our website, all of which are linked in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you a ton. Now back to the show.
All right, we just had Jonathan Marks on the show in Marin County, San Francisco, California. Just an incredible story from Grateful Graphics to real estate and all the nuggets in between. Give me your first take.
Yeah. So, man, I just feel like can't talk to Jonathan Marks without just having a big smile on my face. I feel like he's got like a crazy enthusiasm. I think that the intangible part of that is he's the type of guy who would pick up everything, move across the country, and start a completely new business in an area where he didn't know anybody. I just feel like he has that kind of level of uh, optimism and belief, and I want to call that out because it's not. Although that's not like here are the 10 steps to have a great business. I sure think that doesn't hurt to have that. So that enthusiasm, I think, is one of the first things that I could note. Um, a couple takeaways. I mean, themes. He talked about heart and soul, bringing heart and soul back into real estate. And then he talked, that's like obviously like a very big picture kind of ethereal concept. But when he boiled it down and he talked about the ways that throughout the transaction, they're doing handwritten cards, they're doing a basket, he's writing a handwritten card to the other agent. They're making a point to go to the agent on the other side of the transaction's website or Google page or Facebook page or Zillow page or wherever and leaving a positive review about them. I think that all of those steps are, I mean, he's laying the groundwork for people to want to work with him. He's building a reputation that's going to precede him. When agents think about Jonathan Marks, they're like, oh, yeah, he's the guy who went out of his way to do this for me. When they get an offer from him, they're having like a positive connotation. I just think those little steps that don't take a lot of time, but it sounds like he's built that as a system into his business, just go a long way to not only practically building his business, but also, he's putting heart and soul back into real estate. I think that's a great example. And then, we asked him about, you want to be high touch, but how do you incorporate technology? And I love that he's like, yeah, that great newsletter that you get every week, I pay somebody to do it, And he's embarrassed by that. And I'm like, that's actually a great example.
Brilliant.
It's like that's not that's not his sweet spot. It's not where he wants to be spending his time. And yeah, he's not ashamed to do that. So I think, maybe the takeaway for me and for the agents listening to this might be like, okay, where do I just like see my tank being filled when I'm working? Like, where do I get energy from in my business and what drains my energy? and going, okay, if things are draining my energy, can I delegate that? Can I outsource that? Can I give it to somebody else? Um, yeah, I think that was awesome. And then, yeah, the whole story about Grateful Graphics, I think, was really smart. He kind of jokingly said, "Do as I say, not as I do," when it comes to employees and team members. And yet, I also think that the way that he's chosen to approach his team, keeping it relatively small, for him, it's perfect. You know, we've interviewed agents that have really large teams that would probably be difficult to do at scale, but he's not trying to have that kind of scale. So there's a sweet spot for him, and I think for a lot of teams, that sweet spot is a few agents where they collaborate really closely. They all participate together. He has one-on-ones with each of them, and that really works for him, and it seems to be really in alignment with the type of person he is. So I think it's like kind of a know thyself person. Like, don't feel like you need to have a team of 20 to 25 people if you're the type of person who wants to have a close relationship with every single person on your team. So that was some of my takeaways. What about you?
Yeah, I love how his story from the identifying a need in real estate of, hey, there's not heart and soul there, then infuses into his career. And so he sees that. And then even just his persistence walking in and going, hey, this is why you should hire me. The persistence there, he's like, I'm pushing all my chips in. I want to be with the best. I want to run with the best and set that culture and just even emphasis on his character. Like it shows who he is. And so he starts out that way, and I even love when he identifies, like at some point, a client says, hey, you don't have time for me. And again, it's like, okay, there's a problem here, assess, look up, and then begin to infuse heart and soul and go, how do we then come around this, build the team, the support system to be successful and to give clients the best of us? And so I love to, I mean, he joked a little bit about open houses and it's not his favorite thing, but yet he would do anything for his clients. It just goes back again to, we say heart and soul, whatever it may be for you, but just again, keeping front and center the client. It's client care. It's thinking about them, their best interest. I love too, just the way he set himself up. You know, a lot of us, I think, can be reactionary. He has set himself up for success where he can just think about that. It's not about the paycheck. Yes, again, those things are great. But he's able to kind of sit back and go, yeah, I could retire, but at the end of the day, I love just being able to infuse myself into the client relationship to see them have a win, to set them up for success, and to have them elated that he did a great job for them. And so, again, you just see that pouring out, that passion pouring out of him, where it's no longer about the transaction. It's about the what he's providing, his character, the culture he's setting for his team, and all those aspects. So, thanks so much, Jonathan Marks. It was truly an honor to have you on the show. Grateful for you.
Jonathan, you're awesome.